I just realized how important it is for me to be attentive to my own listening, to how my body listens actually, because this is the whole body that participates in this activity. And it is really important for me to be able to have a special time that is dedicated only to this kind of experience, like it 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 does not need to be the whole week, but to have some time that is assigned just to listening.
Hello, everyone. I'm Victoria Vesna, and you're tuned into Vibrations Matter. In this episode, I connect you to Anna Nacher, who's tuning in from Poland. Our paths have crossed many times, beginning online during the pandemic when she participated as a remote artist in residence for Atmosphere of Sound. Since then, we've met in person both in Los Angeles and across Europe, and I've witnessed her merging all the different paths that she's been on. She's a remarkable thinker and creator who weaves together digital theory, permaculture gardening, Zen Buddhist practice, and her experience as a performer with the Magic Carpathians project. This unique synthesis culminates in her recent work, The Breath Library, where she records individual breaths and transforms them into immersive sound compositions. Take a moment to listen and breathe with us and enjoy this episode.
I just came back from a very long walk with the students who invited me. Actually, it was related to the exhibition at one of the galleries in Krakow, and the walk was about what people call patchy Anthropocene. It's the concept from Anna Nacher, and the concept of ferality, because this is the outskirts of the city. So we have this kind of mixed environment, where there is like very corporate, buildings, but like just across the fence, there is this absolute abundance of life, So we were walking in the area and tracing those kind of unusual combinations or contrasts or places that are, you know, um, that are in abundance of life, so to speak. So that was a very nice
So you did
event.
the walk, and were you also doing breathing exercises and incorporating sound, or you were just foraging and looking?
Oh, we were incorporating, actually, we were discussing the whole sensorium in a way that we were inquiring how the sensorial economies work in the environment, so to speak, with emphasis on sound, of course, and on listening. Situated listening was also a topic. So we tried to read this environment via different sensorial regimes because it's May, it's really cold, it's unseasonably cold. That is
Mhm.
also one of the facets of climate catastrophe. But there's also such a wonderful wealth of smells and sounds and birds around, and everything is just blooming, even if it's cold. So it's a good
And this
time
is
to
in
do
a
this.
in a more kind of urban environment that you
Yeah,
were walking around. I love this because I think it's so important, particularly for students, to show them that nature is not outside. You don't go to
exactly.
nature. One of the best
Yes.
examples was when Ian Kerr from Spurs came to our campus and he was foraging behind fences and walls right on campus and then making a dinner from it. And they have a book called Eat Your Sidewalk. So people are like,
Mm.
but that's polluted. That's awful. And he's like, well, yeah, that's your environment.
Yeah,
That's your
exactly.
nature. That's your nature.
Yeah.
And I love that. That's exactly what you were doing with sound,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but I would like you to dial back a little bit, not a little bit, a lot. Our paths have crossed so many times, even when we didn't know each other, our paths were crossing. And then we wrote together, and in the first essay that we co-wrote, it was very much about both of us inadvertently, without a plan, started thinking about what influenced us in our childhood early on. And I've discovered and I've become fascinated at how this really shapes us and creates a kind of foundation. Even if it's negative experiences, in the end, it can be transformed into something that becomes the art form. So dialing back, what started you, now that you look back and you know where you are and you've defined your path and you're on it, right? So you're not
Mhm.
searching, you're on the path.
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm sure there were times where you were like, what am I doing?
Yes,
Like
yes.
all of us. But what would you say was the first moment where you just went, this is really interesting. I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm gonna go this way.
Mhm. Well, yeah, in a retrospect, there were quite a few of those moments. I think
Mm-hmm.
those moments usually appear when I'm immersed in sound, you know, um, be it my own voice, that may happen, although that maybe happened more in the past. Now I have a different relationship to my own voice. Which is not to say that I'm less interested in it. Quite on the contrary, I'm more interested in my voice, but in different ways. So I think this is the relationship with my voices has been changing throughout my life, and now it is an interesting moment where I don't feel this urge to exploit it, if you know what I mean. I'm more at ease with it, just willing to be more collaborative, more receptive, more open to unexpected, so to speak. So this is really important. But there are also like quite a few moments like just recently, I went for this trip to Greece, and that was at some point I realized that actually I offered myself a luxury of a trip that is all about field recording. So that was the only and sole activity of a week-long travel to the Deccanese Islands. And
Nice.
that was, yes, that was amazing, because uh, some of the islands, like Patmos, for example, it can be very touristic, but there are places that are completely empty, almost completely empty. It is still not the high season. So I just realized how important it is for me to be attentive to my own listening, to how my body listens actually, because this is the whole body that participates in this activity. And it is really important for me to be able to have a special time that is dedicated only to this kind of experience, like it 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 does not need to be the whole week, but to have some time that is assigned just to listening. But also, on the other hand, it often happens that I'm just in the middle of the city and I'm just walking, the very busy street, and all of a sudden I'm struck by this voice of the blackbird, sitting in on a tree and just, I I don't know, but maybe that comes from years of practicing attentive listening, that at this point I just hear things in different way that I guess most people do. Um, it's really difficult to describe it, but it's like my like my sense of how sound functions in the environment is so um, refined, I would say. I see many different layers of sound, and
Mhm.
not only when I focus on it. It happens all the time. So that it feels like, a special sense almost, developed. So yeah. So
And this is
these
also
are a few
related
moments.
to your meditation practice, right? Because you do many hours of Zen sit, right? And that's really just a stillness and abiding and calmness and listening. That's the only sense that's working, right? Because your eyes are almost closed, you're not moving your body. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm. But meditation practice, you know what it's like. It's not always calmness, right? There is a lot of things going on in your mind, and that can
That's
be,
right.
so this is far from, well, there are different moments, I think, different stages. One day it is really a sensation and experience of being grounded and pretty like able to focus, and the very next day my mind is this monkey or an
Yes.
elephant, right? Like so wild elephant. So I think if there is anything, I mean, well, in some ways my meditation practice of course is a foundation that I can rely on, but the way it provides me with some kind of a basis is different. I think it does something to your perception of time. That
Mhm.
would be my description of it. Like it gave me this capability of um, slowing down, when things happen quickly,
Right,
right? When there
right,
is a
right.
rapid succession of things, including, emotional, arousal. What happens is that thanks to meditation practice, I'm able to sort of slow down, like not to act on each impulse, which also helps my listening practice because I'm able to hear more. I think
Of
it is because
course.
of that,
So
right?
so so that's what really I'm pointing to. As far as the senses go, you're closing your eyes, you're not moving your body, you're smelling and you're hearing. And as you're training your mind, you're actually allowing the listening to be in a different mode, right? Where it becomes much more complex. So I can totally see what you're talking about because the mind is there no matter what, and it's going to keep
Hmm.
swirling around no matter what. And then
Yes.
when you start
Yes.
having it in relation to also listening to what cannot be heard is really important for
Hmm.
anybody listening to this to differentiate and to understand that that's what we're talking about. It's not necessarily hearing sounds because
Hmm.
our frequency acceptance is very, very low. What we hear is really, really tiny. So listening is what you're referring to is much deeper. And then, of course, it relates to different frequencies and different vibrations, and then how it expands from the environment, the people, the energies. It's so complex. So I totally get when you're saying it's all these layers of
Hmm.
listening that's not only just what you hear.
Hmm. Absolutely, yes. And like yeah, I think it's a really interesting experience when you're listening um to when you're in a very noisy environment. Like for example,
Mhm.
I was on a ferry, from Athens to Patmos, and that is 8 hour long ferry trip. And of course it is noisy. It is, you're on an open deck because I was walking constantly, and I went to record on this open top deck where people there were a lot of people. They were talking, they were enjoying themselves on top of this the
Noisy, very,
yeah,
the
exactly. But
engines.
yes, everything was there. But at some point, I heard this very distinct sound I couldn't associate with anything, and I just looked around, and then I noticed people were playing this Greek board game called backgammon, I believe. So
Uh-huh.
there were this, sound when there is uh, like the dices,
Yeah, yeah.
thrown on the board, right? So I was so surprised, like, how
It's
could I even, how did it travel, right? So this kind of experience,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
or in the same environment, there was the guy who was using his Christian Orthodox rosary,
Uh-huh.
and they often do this movement of swirling it. And it
Yes.
also, there was a very tiny sound of those beads,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
right? So that was amazing, that at that point, because of course I was recording, so I was attentive to, and the whole soundscape, but it was amazing, that
Yeah.
amidst this noise, you could hear such a, minutiae
So
of
you've
vibrations.
refined your filter, basically.
Mm, it
You've
surprised me, it took me by a surprise. I wasn't expecting that. I just heard
uh-huh.
it, and as I said, I couldn't associate it to anything,
Uh-huh.
familiar,
Uh-huh.
and so that was really interesting moment.
Very cool. So let me prompt you back to your
Hmm.
childhood
Yeah.
and to what moments were really influential in your path.
Hmm. Actually, the whole path started with, a moment where, for the first time, I heard my one of my teachers at the primary school play piano, and it was a very bad piano, by the way. And I was maybe, oh, I don't remember, like 9 year old, something like
Mhm.
that. And that was the first time when I encountered live music.
Uh,
And this moment, that was a single moment that completely changed my life forever. Even though the piano was bad, it was not very sophisticated music, but there was something in sound. So I think that's why sound is far more important to me than music. Like,
mm,
right? Like that there is something very primal in this sensibility, I think. And ever since I wanted to learn music properly, but I couldn't for many reasons. As a kid, my parents lived in a village. It was really complicated at the time to attend a musical school, so I couldn't do that simply. And another moment that was kind of crucial for me was when I, for the first time, heard uh, Chopin on the TV. In Poland,
interesting.
yes, in Poland we have international festivals,
Mhm.
international Chopin festival that happens every 4 years. And that was one of those years. I remember it was actually the year when Ivo Pogorelic was in this contest.
Wow.
And
Nice.
so there was that was a pure coincidence. That was just on the TV. That was during socialist times. We had only two channels, public TV, so there was not much choice. And there was simply this international festival on one of the channels, and I was just in the room, and I heard the music, and I was completely immersed in it, like on the spot, like immediately, drawn into it. And that lasted for, I think, maybe 10 minutes. I literally couldn't move. I was just like stuck in front of the screen. And then my father came, and he just changed the
Change
channel,
the
and I was like,
channel.
yes, he was so cruel. He was just, I mean, he
He's
just
like, this is
switched.
boring.
Yes, exactly. He was like, it's nothing. And, well, there was no way I could convince my father to,
Turn the
switch back
channel
to,
back.
yes, again. So I felt so disappointed, like
Wow,
that
interesting.
was one of the actually, really one of the moments that was I was really devastated, and ever since I was missing music, and ever since I love Chopin, by the way. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, but I think that was one of the very early musical experiences, which prompted me to get a guitar. And back
Mhm.
at the time, 70s, no, 80s. That was 80s. I was a bit older, around 10 or 12. So uh, uh, I mean, finally, my parents were able to get me a guitar. And at that time, again, it was really bad guitar. I mean, you couldn't even properly get it in tune, but nevertheless, I worked hard on it. And the thing was that I learned the chords upside down, you know, because I got, you know,
I
I
love
got,
it.
yes, I got the document with
Yeah.
so I learned it, but I just learned it upside down. So I think I think I was an experimental musician,
Without
long
knowing
before.
it.
Yes, exactly.
That's so brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, it lasted for quite some time. I think for maybe a week, before I was so proud to play a few chords to my friend who by then was, more better acquainted with it. So when she saw what I'm playing, she was like, "What are you playing?" And I was like, "It's C major." And I was like, "What?" you know and she noticed that I'm playing it upside down, so that was kind of a
That is
funny
so
moment.
great. I love
Yeah.
that moment. That's beautiful. Were you
Yes.
feeling embarrassed or it didn't matter?
Oh, of course,
Yes,
absolutely. I mean, I felt really stupid,
like
on the,
horrified.
but on the other hand, I relearned it. But on the other hand, it gave me, I think, well, I was quite actually, interested in those upside down chords. So,
Yeah.
as I said,
Yeah.
I picked up some penchant for experimental, music very early in my life.
Absolutely. I mean, both of these instances you talk about as if they're coincidences, but I don't believe in coincidences anymore. I think these
Mm,
moments are really meant to be, and if they didn't happen in that moment, they would have been in another moment because you're kind of wired to go in that
mm,
direction, and something like that would
mhm.
present itself to you so that you kind of move in that direction. But
Yeah.
I love the story of upside down chords. It's just
Yes.
wonderful.
Yeah, and but by the way, it was the 80s, and like a few years later, it was the boom for the punk music in Poland. That was,
Right.
shortly before 89. And the only way to actually have access to the early recordings was to participate in those informal distribution, circuits and the whole scene. So that was like another level, and that was also something that I think to some extent shaped me, participation in this underground scenes, so
Well,
to
talk
speak.
talk a little bit more about those scenes because they don't exist anymore in that format,
Mm-mm,
right?
mm-mm,
But
no.
it shaped a lot of people, and I mean, I was in Eastern Europe at that time too, and I definitely remember how dedicated the underground scene was and how
Mm-hmm.
informed, actually much more than in the States. Like when I would come back in the States, I felt that a lot of it was washed out compared to what I had experienced with people obsessed with a particular band or type of music. You know what I mean? Like they find
Yes.
out everything about it.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, in Poland, it was much stricter than in ex-Yugoslavia. So I'm curious how that was
So
manifesting.
Poland was actually, I think, not that strict anymore in the 80s. Of course, the martial law in 81 was probably one of the darkest moments, but even then, you had people who were organizing some informal, illegal then concerts. Of course, I was too young to experience that. In 81, I was 10 years old. But my experience was like around 86, through 89. At that time, I think the scene was pretty mature in terms of music distribution, concerts. There was this big festival in Yarocin. There is a lot of literature about it now, and even two movies that
Mm.
associate this whole movement with
Oh.
political changes. right? Because I remember the way I remember it, that there was practically no way to get engaged in punk music scene and not be involved in some kind of political, um,
Interesting.
either actions or at least awareness. We
Mhm.
all just wanted to be free. And my particular situation was really interesting because I was attending a secondary school, a high school, in the city in south of Poland that was notorious for really strong relations with the United States, because a lot of families just emigrated, in the 19th century
Mhm.
and later. So there was the whole informal market circuit where people would sell, the uh,
Bootleg.
yes, bootlegs and everything that was just sent from the US. And there was also kind of, I would say, informal or even illegal economic circuit where people were trading in currency, for example. Some of my colleagues, like
Yes,
people who,
yes.
yeah, from the high school, they were just, like trading currency big time. So
The
that
black
was like a
market.
really crazy
Yeah,
period of time, I must admit.
yeah. So is this the time that you started playing with others and forming a band? Or
Yeah,
you
now
dropped?
I guess, yes, we
Yeah,
had
you
some
dropped there
connections.
for a second.
Yeah.
So is this the time when you started playing with others and forming a band or working in band
Um,
configurations?
yeah, I think it was the very beginning of it, in a sense that was probably the first time when I was brave enough to sort of speak, to sort of sing for other people. But actually, I think I started like actively be more active in collaborations with people when I became a student, during my studies in Krakow. And my first performing act happened, I think, around 1993, something like that, or four. I don't remember
Mhm.
it clearly now. Back then, I was more into sort of like uh, punk influenced singer songwriting. So, like Billy Bragg, for example, this kind of stuff. Or
Mhm.
I don't know, like, maybe, I mean, Nina Hagen was always,
Yeah, well,
inspiration, but
we love her. But
yeah.
it's really post-punk you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what
That's
I
true.
was interested in too, and I became involved in. The hardcore punk that came out of London and spread around, I could not relate to that.
Mhm.
I felt it was very boy stuff and
Yeah.
very kind of harsh. But post-punk started really expanding. And the wonderful thing about it was that anybody can do it,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Anybody can get on stage. I mean, this is what punk really broke out the whole scene.
hmm
And they opened that door for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And
so
for me, it was also the fact that most of my first concerts as a solo singer-songwriter or in duo with my different friends at the time. So the first concerts were organized on the occasion of environmental gatherings, like, some kind of
that right.
we used to have, yes, I was like actively associated with environmental movement at the time. So whenever there was some kind of like bigger gathering of the early environmentalists, we
You
used to
played.
have, yes, we had festivals, or like conferences, but these were not like, typical conferences.
Right,
So
right.
this kind of setup.
Mhm. And so did you actually form into a full, when did, not did you, when did you form into a full-on band that started recording and touring and
Oh, that was, well, the first album I recorded was actually my solo album,
uh-huh.
and that was still singer-songwriting. That was in 1998. age, I believe.
Mhm.
And then that was at that time I met my partner and soon husband, and he was active in a band that was like um, more into acoustic improvisation, so to speak, like very
Mhm.
much, I would say, well, my husband was really strongly influenced by Colin Walcott, and he even got in touch with Lani Harrison, his wife,
Uh-huh.
and they used to organize Colin Walcott meetings in Poland, which were kind of dedicated to the like memory of Colin Walcott because he died in an accident in the former Eastern Germany.
Mhm.
So that was also, I would say, this kind of music just really that was really interesting. Some kind of it developed only in Central and Eastern Europe, I believe, at the time. Like this kind of mystical acoustic crowd rock, I would say, even if it sounds maybe not really precise, but that was the vibe basically. This strong emphasis on improvising was there. Only they used acoustic instruments like, for example, dulcimer,
Uh-huh.
like different kinds of flutes, so
Mhm.
yeah. So we met and we became friends, and then we became partners, and gradually our collaboration got closer, and then we formed a project that I've been active with for the last uh, almost 25 years or something.
Wow.
So the project was called Magic Carpathians
Right.
Project. Yeah, and we performed in the US twice. I mean, American tours. We played American tours. We performed in Europe and in Poland. There's a couple of CDs on different labels, including American label. And actually, in a couple of weeks, one of our older albums is getting reissued as
Oh, wow.
well, yeah,
Perfect. Perfect
as
timing for
yeah,
this, right?
exactly. So, and interestingly enough, this is the album that we recorded back in 2000, gosh, four
Uh-huh.
originally, and it was actually the music that included voices of the particular river valley in Poland.
Uh-huh.
So field recordings like the birds' voices and a kind of soundscape from Barycz Valley that is a really beautiful place close to Wrocław in the western Poland. So we incorporated all those field recordings and soundscapes and composed the music that would be somehow in dialogue with it. So it's going to be reissued on a small uh, English label, and the official premiere is June 7th, I believe. So
Amazing.
yeah,
So it seems like these two things are collapsing. So you're in a couple of weeks going to do the breath walk that
yeah,
we're going to participate in
yes,
remotely. When you were here in LA, we did a breath walk. You're creating a breath library.
hmm,
But then there's these echoes from the past and this
yeah.
reissuing of this record that, you know, is collapsing together in an interesting way. And then you have your own academic path and writing and teaching. So how do you see all of this gelling together? Where do you see it
Hmm.
going?
That that is a really interesting question. I'm kind of struggling with it because I mean with the question because for my whole life I felt um like I want to be able to move between different areas, Music is important, sound is important, and just recently I just realized that I'm increasingly interested in field recording and also working on my own music. And I would like to build the sound installation that is based on data from the physical environment, because in 2015 we purchased a small patch of land in Slovakia, just across the border, and we established kind of permacultural center there. Basically, this meant as a center where people would be able to heal as well
Mhm.
in nature, and learn how to collaborate with the place, with you know all the life forms around. So I would like to. I have this vision, that this place. I would like um, to make this place speak for itself. So that is the vision in my mind. So this is something that really took me by a surprise. And on the way, there is this project around breathing, breath and breathing, breath library that we, collaborated within, that sort of, put us together in a way, right? So we
Yes, yes.
co breathe.
Co-breathe across the
Yes,
pond.
exactly. Through the COVID pandemics, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah, and when it comes to my academic career, it is, as you probably are aware, there's more and more pressure on
yes.
productivity,
Oh my goodness. Oh my
yes.
goodness.
And but on the other hand, I think I more and more often I meet people who also try to find their own ways around it. We just are we do our best to preserve what's the best, of the university as
Yes.
an
Yeah.
environment, right? So we just launched some kind of, informal campaign, like counter extractivist university, the university that will be, happening outside this framework where you're constantly pushed to be productive and constantly sort of forced into this excellence in research, excellence in teaching, excellence in everything. And the cost is really high. I would say
Yes.
energy costs for everyone involved, including students. So I think there are some ways to really carve out, the spaces where we can breathe, in academia. So
Yes.
that's why my website, I called my website Breathing in Academia. So
Really.
yes.
I mean, it's really critical for people like you and in general who are not in the system in a classic way to be present in that system, in the belly of the beast, if you will, wherever
Yeah.
that may be. I mean, you can say politics is probably the most extreme example, and maybe finance is equally extreme, where it's become so materialistic and so crystallized that people who could make the change just stay away. And the more everybody stays away from it, the more room it
Hmm.
becomes to get even worse.
Hmm.
So it gets really difficult in these environments, but it's very
Hmm.
important that it's not deserted by
Hmm.
those who want to make more breathing space.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just as we were walking today with the students
Yeah,
and the
that's
group
a
that
perfect
gathered.
example. Yeah.
Yeah, but we were actually, I'm interested in finding those crevices, and
Yes.
like in between spaces, right? And you can see it in the city, like there is life like blooming, right next
Yes.
to a place that is completely, devoid of anything. Like you have all those patches of land. Like there was this great project by oh my gosh, I just forgot the name of the person, an artist, American artist who used to buy the, you know, land plots in New York. That was those plots that were kind of um, waste of
Uh,
planning because it was cheap. Gosh, I need to check it out the name and I will tell you in a
okay,
moment.
okay, curious.
Yes, I wrote a blog about it because I was at the conference. Yeah, just recently I started also, writing more,
Mm-hmm.
and especially for my website, and I started Substack because I think, important to get your message to the people who normally probably would not have a chance to find out what you're about. So, Gordon Matta Clark,
Oh,
that is
Mother
the project
Clark,
I'm
of
referring.
course, of
Yes,
course. Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'm referring to his project from, I believe, early 70s. And that was called Reality Properties Fake Estates.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm reminded about this project whenever I think about how we can build those spaces in academia. That I mean, it is increasingly difficult for many reasons, and maybe this is not for this discussion. And on top of that, in Central Europe, we are still underfunded.
Mm-hmm.
Although, as compared to the United States recently, we're probably in a better place,
I think
than
so. I think so. We're
which is,
really, there's so
another
much pressure.
surprising, yes, another surprising observation, right? But at this point, I think, thinking about it, I came to a conclusion that, I mean, probably, like, protesting the system or attacking the system may not be a good strategy. So I'm interested in carving out spaces where we can thrive. I mean, where we
That's
can. Mhm.
We couldn't agree more on that. I feel the same way because and also from recent experience with, all the protests that happen at universities in the US. And then if you match that up with the AI and the tagging and the
Yeah.
social networks,
Yes.
and for those of us who have had experience in Eastern Europe and that kind of autocrat
Mhm.
control, you know that it's impossible to fight, really.
Mhm.
It's in a kind of a classic way. You're just marking
Mhm.
yourself, so you actually become
Mhm.
ineffective. You
Mhm.
you get neutralized in some ways. And it's not that simple. That's the other thing. It's not just black and white. And
Mhm.
how do you breathe together with those that you
Mhm.
totally disagree with? I mean,
Yeah.
this is the real challenge because
Mhm.
we all want clean air, right? I mean,
Mhm. Yeah.
no matter what your political bent is, you cannot say, I want to breathe pollution.
Mhm.
I just wouldn't say that. It's just like everything around it that gets complicated. So to keep to the elements and the simplicity, and like you say, just finding space of support and safety and
Mhm.
community, really, that's the
Yeah.
key.
Yeah, I think that the way I see the situation right now is that the whole system thrives on, partialization, divisions, and compartmentalizations. Like, just recently we had a really tragic event, at the University of Warsaw. One of the students just came with an ox in his bag and killed a janitor, a female
Oh my
janitor.
God.
And
Horrible.
that happened, like, you know, in a broad daylight. Like,
With
people
an
were watching it.
axe. Oh my God.
Yes. And of course, there is, like, huge discussion, right now, because this is also, in some ways, that this is a part of concerted effort at discrediting, the whole group of people, which is mostly university professors,
Right.
doctors, right? So it's very much similar to other places in the world, but the whole discussion, actually, the way it is happening in the public space, and especially in media, tends to, you know talk primarily about mental health issues of this man, of this young man, but practically never, I mean, very rarely, the current state of higher education is mentioned. Like we practically have no time, no space, and no possibility to really meet our students in who they are as
Absolutely. It's
human
so,
beings, right?
so true. I mean, I find it so sad that there's no, again, to stay with our topic, breathing
Mhm.
space for students to really just think, to just
Yeah,
be, to
exactly.
to feel their environment and to get off their devices and just be
Yeah,
there. And
exactly.
I've been doing very much the same thing, just really incorporating more and more. Like, let's just take the time off and midterms, yeah. So
Yeah.
midterm to me now means we're going
Mm-hmm.
to stop and we're going to think, what did we do so
Mm-hmm.
far? And what is this about? And what am I into?
Mm-hmm.
And they're so programmed to think, I need to get my grade, I need to have a deadline if I don't do well. So
Mm-hmm.
when you suddenly say, you don't have to do anything like that, you just need to be present, it's so liberating and confusing at the same time to
Mm-hmm.
them because you're taking them out of the machine and giving them a bird's eye view for a minute, right? But then the system comes right back and the machine just keeps grinding. So it's really an uphill battle. I'm sure you feel the same way. Oh,
Yeah, my
hello.
cat is yes, my cat wants to say hello. Yeah, it is an uphill battle, and but still, I feel like we need to do something about it. And even though the European universities are different, and universities in Poland are still, I mean, free education. I mean, technically speaking, so that's a major difference between Poland
Huge
and the United
difference.
States. But to some extent we do have like similar problems. For example, all those uh, phenomena that they refer to as mental health issues. There's also social political background in it, right? There's
Mm.
also what happens in social media. When I talk to students, I am often horrified. This is not the word you know I well, of course, I function in social media, but my students, they've been shaped by their presence in social media, so they've known it like forever since they were kids,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And that changes a lot, and I can see it. So there's like many problems on layered on one upon another, and it's really difficult to find like one solution. And what I'm really afraid is that the current, I mean, universities currently sort of look for this magic one solution to this really complex problems. And the artificial, I mean, AI, we've been there already, right?
That's right.
Our whole process of teaching is so heavily streamlined, right? With all the rubrics, all the forms to
Yes,
fill in,
yes,
it's
yes.
so partialized, right? So it's a huge topic, but I think it's we really needs to do something about being able to breathe together with our students.
Absolutely. And in fact, speaking of the students who are raised with devices that are powered by electricity and the
Mm,
consumer society, the big issue that we actually are responsible to teach them is what happens when the electricity goes out,
yeah.
because it will. With all the climate change, it does.
Mm,
Whether it's fire or flood or earthquake or war, you're going to have to function
mhm,
with none of your devices, no Wi-Fi, no network, no social. And
mhm,
if that becomes the way to relate to the world and it's suddenly the rug is pulled out, that's very dangerous. So it really is our responsibility to teach them how to unplug
mhm,
and
mhm.
listen and really
Yeah,
listen and look
yeah.
around to build their intuitions
Mhm,
because we can't even tell them what to expect. The world is changing so quick. that we can't really tell them, here's your path, here's what's going to happen next. We don't know, right? Nobody
No,
knows.
it's exactly. I have, I have students from Ukraine, and
Mm,
that's right. It is happening in this part of world. It is happening. I mean, we've been through it together to some extent.
mhm,
Of course, I'm sitting, safe in my apartment and I'm not being shelled
mhm.
constantly day and night, right? But so many people I know don't have this luxury, and they had to come up with scenarios that would allow them to function. And I think this is, well, personally, I think that Ukrainians are one of the most resilient people I've ever known.
Mm.
Because under circumstances, I really admire anyone who not only thrives, but also manages to help others around them to build communities and to be active as artists, writers, and researchers. And this is just something that make me want to learn and be humble, just
Mhm.
just be humble and learn as much as possible from those people there. Yeah.
So, do you integrate breathing and walks and mindfulness in all your classes?
Oh, well, if it's possible, because of course, system works in such a way that it's not always possible, but practically in all the classes I teach, there is a component where I want my students to be able to decide for themselves actually what they want to do and to
Oh,
take
nice.
responsibility, right? Which is not always,
Not
roses.
easy. Not easy. Not when they're programmed, right? They see it as a
Yeah.
weakness. Like, what?
I mean, I got like I think this year I had this situation where I conducted some kind of experiment with my students. I wanted them to be like co-authors, of the course, and I think it was the worst evaluation I ever gotten because
Really?
part of the group was not ready for that, and
Yes.
that was also really precious learning moment for me. But on the other hand, I think I'm really, worried and sad that the whole system, I mean, the whole university, the whole academia, uh, there is so much talk about how you learn on your mistakes, etc., blah, blah, blah. There's absolutely no space for it
That's
whatsoever.
right. That's right. And the collaboration and interdiscipline,
Yes,
there's all these like buzzwords,
yeah,
and then when
exactly.
you go with it, it's
Yeah,
like suddenly
yeah.
everybody's your enemy or something.
It's just a
It's
smoke screen. It's just a smoke screen,
it is.
right? So,
And it's a global issue. So it'll be
yeah.
interesting to see how it shifts. There's mega shifts happening in
Hmm.
academia and in teaching and in learning. And so much of it is going outside. And I really appreciate these moments when together or when I was, part of what you were doing, we were outside of the system, of the
Hmm.
academic
Yes.
systems.
Yeah.
So still being teachers, still taking responsibility to lead and to pull it together, but fully building it on what was wrong with the system, right?
Yeah.
Allowing for another space. And I hope you're going to think more and more about offering these kind of breathing and sound and vibration events where these worlds that you've been exploring collapse and we can all
Hmm.
experience you playing music, singing, having us breathe with you, maybe tone with you, feel our bodies, look around. You're so good at it, and I really appreciate that. And I know how difficult it is in the academic context, but hopefully you'll also take it out of the academic context and
Hmm.
have your own kind of thing going on.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I'm on sabbatical this year, and sabbatical ends at the end of September. But funny thing is that this year, I got more and more invitations, to situations that are about creating educational environment, which is precisely that, what you said.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
and this is wonderful, because like it's different relationships with students, with young people, with artists, with, whoever comes to those events. This is just amazing. So I would very much like to explore those possibilities, definitely. This is my plan for when I get back to teaching in October.
Wonderful. Well, I'm excited about you going back to that and giving more of these breath walks and adding to your breath library. It's really wonderful to know you, to work with you, and also to share this with others because we tend to just hear things or participate in events, but to hear a little bit more about your path was really such a nice moment. Thank you, Nana. Thank you so
Yeah, thank you,
much.
Victoria. Thank you. When you think about it, the fact that you're in LA and I'm here in Krakow, and we talk about it, and we have so much in common, and we've done things together. This alone is just like one of the most wonderful things that,
It's
can
it's
happen in this world.
absolutely it's what the pandemic gifted us.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
We did a lot during the pandemic.
Yeah,
Thank you.
true. Thank you so much. Bye.